Welcome to the NLP View with your host, Donna Blinston. Each week, Donna will explore how the techniques of NLP can help improve your personal and professional life. And now, here's your host, Donna Blinston.
Hello and welcome to the NLP View. My name is Donna Blinston. Today's guest is Jeremy Lazarus, author of the best-selling book, Ahead of the Game, How to Use Your Mind to Win in Sport. Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP, is a study of human excellence. It focuses on the difference that makes a difference in a successful outcome. NLP teaches individuals the strategies, techniques, and the physiology used by our sporting role models to achieve excellence, often in a fraction of the time, teaching people how to get into the flow states, enabling them to consciously enter states of peak performance as and when they need to. Jeremy Lazarus explains these techniques in his book, Ahead of the Game, which is ideal for coaches, athletes and players of all levels who are eager to learn and succeed. So I would like to welcome to the show Jeremy Lazarus. Hello, Jeremy.
Hi, Donna. How are you?
I am brilliant, thank you. Really good. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good. And thank you, Jeremy, for joining me today on the show. It really is an honour and, for me, a privilege. You're the reason why I got into NLP. It was your little advert that I saw in the bottom of the Nursing Times. You know, it was because of that I thought, right, you know, off I go on this journey that's still ongoing. So It's a huge, huge privilege for me to
it's a privilege
have you here on the show.
Yeah,
you're great. Welcome. I've been really looking forward to interviewing you, both for myself, but also for some of my clients who are listening to us now. The Olympics have inspired and motivated so many people, as I'm sure you'll know yourself.
Yes.
But it's both for the able-bodied athletes and also those with disabilities. It's given people like a new focus and, in some areas, a new purpose for them in life. And I know that, for me, your book opened my eyes in many, many ways, as did your training and everything else. But it'll give people, I suppose, how's the best way to explain this? The tools and the tricks that they need to give themselves that confident boost and that belief in themselves that they're able to do it. And I think it's that gift that your book gives that makes it step out from all the rest.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So before we start, Jeremy, can you tell our audience about yourself?
Sure. Well, believe it or not, I used to be an accountant. I think in the States you call it a CPA. So I was a qualified accountant and a finance director, management consultant. And some people would say I was successful in that particular part of my life, but I didn't really feel satisfied. And about 15 years ago, it's a long story, but essentially I quit my job. I attended a personal development course, and I realized that what's really important to me is to make a difference, to help people to have the kind of lives they really want to have, which is a million miles away from what most accountants would do. And as I say, it's a long story. Basically, I quit my job one day to set up my own coaching business. And in looking for qualifications and knowledge that would help me to coach more effectively, I came across NLP, and I did a 2-day introduction course, and I realized that there was enough in there, both for me personally, me professionally in my business, and also for me as a coach to help my clients. There was enough within the field of NLP to help me, to help myself and others to get the kind of results that everyone wanted. And so I did a practitioner course, master practitioner course, and then in 2000 became a trainer of NLP. And since then I've been working. Initially, it was mainly with business people because that was my background. But also, if I turn the clock back again, I used to play soccer. We call it football over here, but I know in America they call it soccer. I was a semi-professional goalkeeper. And so I had a very keen interest in sport. I played it at a pretty reasonable level. And in about 2004, 2005, I had some sort of personal changes in my life, and I realized that one of the things that would really fulfill me would be not just working with business people, but also to work with athletes and sports people. So I actually used some NLP, and I did some kind of visioning about where I wanted to be. And, I wanted to be, writing books, working with athletes and coaches at a pretty senior level. And that's really what I do now. I work, I say, with sports people, and I still do business and work-related NLP. And it's just something I love doing. It's a real passion for me.
Yeah, here with the passion. And it's interesting how you've moved through that, going through the physio and applying it in your background initially as a business, but then as sports. That's one thing that I found with NLP is you can turn it into any different discipline that you want to in any area. It's understanding the techniques and the power that NLP's got, and it's that whole mindset that it offers you. And once you've got that, you've got those foundations, and you start to understand why things happen and understand yourself, that everything else starts to improve and develop.
Absolutely. I think, as you say, knowing more about yourself, being able to manage yourself and recognize if you're in a good state or not good state, and if a not good state, how can you change it? So to recognize that in yourself, and also then to be able to communicate more effectively with other people. I think, to me, those are the three key benefits of NLP. This is what I say to my clients and my students. One, it improves communication. Two, it helps people to change their thinking and behaviors and beliefs. And thirdly, it helps them to replicate excellence, or to model excellence, as we call it in NLP. And with those three benefits, you can apply it, as you said, in any walk of life and every walk of life.
Completely. And it's that modeling excellence, that noticing the difference that makes a difference, which is one of the keys within the sports psychology side of it.
Yes.
As with everything and every part of it. That really is the foundations of NLP, isn't it?
It is. And when and also, I mean, when I was researching my book, I did a lot of reading and saw a lot of quotes from elite top athletes, and so many of them said, I mean, there's one particular quote from, I think it was Sally Gunnell, who's a British 400 meters hurdler, and she won the gold medal in the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. I think she said something like, on the starting line, up to, I think, 70, 80, even 90% of the final outcome depends on the mentality of the athletes, because at that level, they've all got broadly the same physical capabilities. Yeah. So it's the mentality that makes the difference. And NLP can help people to have the right kind of mentality.
It does, definitely. And that's one thing that's been focused on more and more now, isn't it? That achieving that flow state within sports in this context, achieving that peak performance for yourself. And it's that peak performance in whatever that you do, but especially in the sport, being able to capture that moment and know what it is that you're doing when you're in those states, so that you can do it whenever you need to.
Yeah.
So even if that day does start off wrong, or something different happened on your way down to the racetrack, or whatever you're doing in particular, but if something does happen that takes you out of your stride, you know that you've got that mind control. You know that you can get into that state as and when you need it, without letting other things that are happening to you or that happen around you affect your physiology, your state, and inevitably affect your outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the being able to get yourself back on track, that's one of the things that distinguishes the elite athletes from the people who are just merely good. Because things are bound to go wrong at some point in a sporting competition. Not necessarily every single time, but at some point in someone's career, things are not going to go perfectly. And it's how you deal with it that counts. It
is. That while we're on this area, it all links back to the cause and effect, which is one thing you discuss excellently in your book. And cause and effect is personally one of my favourite principles of NLP, and one that I remember in your training, how you invited us to play it for 2 weeks. So I started playing this game back in January 2004, and I'm still
you've been doing
playing
it ever
that game. Yeah, because it does transform your life. You move from being at effect, which is where potentially a lot of people who are struggling could be at that effect state, where other people's behaviours and of external events affect them. Whereas when they move to at cause, the other things still happen. Whereas instead of being the result of other people's behaviour, they can say, well, hang on, what can I do about it?
Yeah.
What role am I playing? And that's one thing that you allude to in the sports psychology, of how it's the attitude that people have got, because everyone can have that attitude to being success. It's what you pay attention to, what you focus on. And how would you explain to our audience of how that the at cause and at effect can be applied within sport?
Okay. So as you say, someone who's at effect tends to have the attitude that it's other people's fault. It's the referee or the umpire, or it's the conditions. They make excuses. They blame other people. Whereas people who are at cause tend to have the attitude of, things happen. It's how I deal with it that counts. If it's going to be, it's up to me. They have a kind of can-do attitude. And, when I work with athletes both one-to-one or in groups, I distinguish this for them right up front. And so I help them to realize that to be at cause will help them to get the kind of results they want. Whereas if they're going to blame other people and expect other people to change, that's hard work. It's much easier to change your own mindset and to control your own mindset than it is to control other people. So does that kind of summarize it? I think that's a lot more detail, but I'm aware of the sort of time limitations. Does that summarize it, Donna?
I think it does. It's that moving from being at effect, isn't it? You're moving from being the result of what other people are doing to being in charge of how you respond to them. Yes. You're no longer being controlled. And as soon as you take that control for yourself, you get a different perspective. You have more options. You're more flexible. Yeah. And it's almost like a lot of people want to put limitations on you. And it's not that they're intending to limit you. It's just that the way that they might express things, you can often be perceived in a way that's not useful without an ill intent on their half. So As soon as you remove that and step out of it and take ownership for what's happening, then everything starts to change. It could be raining that day when you're going to play sport. The pitch might be particularly muddy or soggy. Yeah. You might have had to have moved at last minute and played another into one of your a lesser favourite place in whatever sport that you're playing. Yeah. But you're still, as an individual, a bloody good athlete. You're still capable. You can still achieve your personal best, and it's all that, rather than, oh my God, it's raining. The pitch is all this
too
and
windy.
That.
I can't. If I'm playing tennis, I don't play well against left-handers. That kind of stuff. So, absolutely, it's having a positive attitude that if it's going to be, it's up to me. I can make it happen.
Completely, and for the coach as well.
Yes.
You'll often hear. I've heard a few times on the telly listening to a football match, if the side has lost, and you're speaking to that coach, and they give excuses and justifications for the team, and it's like, well, maybe that is true. However, justifying that they've not succeeded, okay, accepting that they've not succeeded is one thing, but noticing what they could do differently to make it even better next time is going to be more empowering, rather than giving them excuses for what they've done.
I have to believe that some of the things that coaches and managers say in sport to the media is probably for the media's consumption. I'd like to think. I'd like to think that when they're back in the changing room, when the microphones are off, that they are more direct about about how the players can take responsibility and change things rather than blaming the referee or the conditions.
Yes. I'd like to think so as well. I'm sure they do. I'm sure there's many sweet words said behind closed doors.
Yes.
One thing that's also that you've brought to light and made me think of again in another way through reading your book for a second time is the analogy that you've made between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. You've got a beautiful metaphor that you explain of how your conscious mind is a bit like the captain of a ship,
yes,
and the unconscious mind being the crew of the ship. So the captain's job is to think, to analyse, to plan and set the directions for the ship's journey or mission or whatever that day. And the crew is very much there to do what the captain has said. And often, sometimes, one of the reasons why people get into trouble and struggle is because they're almost trying to do the job. It's like the captain's trying to get in the way and do the job of the crew, when the unconscious mind, it knows the skill, it knows how to do the job, just in the same way as once you've learnt to drive, you drive from A to B without even realising what you've done, but you've got there safely. Yeah. You've learnt the skill, you've got it there, and just to trust that you can do it, and let your conscious mind, being the captain, just focus on the how you're going to do it.
I think if we take golf, for example, when the golfer's about to hit the ball, ideally he or she would be thinking, okay, I want to put the ball in this particular part of the fairway, or 10 yards from the pin, and to let once they've decided consciously what they're going to do, just to allow their body, their natural, assuming they've already practiced and got the skills, just their body just to actually hit the ball because they've already visualized where they want it to go.
Yeah.
So that's the distinction between conscious and unconscious.
It is, and it's not getting in your way of yourself and overthinking it and over worrying about it. One thing I do find with my clients is that they worry. They start worrying whether it is the right thing or they're standing right, or whether they should move, or maybe I should change it for today because somebody else that they've watched has done it slightly different, rather than just trusting themselves.
Yes.
And trusting that they're able to do it. And if they don't do it, or they don't win that individual match, then they've learnt a hell of a lot already. They've learnt what they did, what they'd like to do differently next time, things that they could work on, tweaks for next time, rather than there and then worrying, because it's a worry there and then that's going to interfere with what they're doing and the individual success.
Yeah. I think assuming they've got the ability to do it, I think experimenting during a match is probably not a smart thing to do. Experiment during training, but in a match, unless it's really extreme circumstances, I'd stick to what you know. As a general rule, obviously there's exceptions to everything.
Completely. Which I guess flows us really on to being no failure, only feedback. One of the huge, big principles within NLP, that there is no failure, there's only feedback. And even if you do not succeed, you've got those options. You've learnt ways not to do it, but that in itself is a learning. And for every learning that we have, we develop in ourselves.
Well, that's the attitude we have in NLP. That's an extremely useful attitude. I would say, well, not everyone has that attitude. And I think if more people could accept the no failure, only feedback, I think sport would be more fun for most people, and I think their results would improve. And again, when I was researching the book, there's lots of quotes from memory, people like Roger Black, who's a British athlete who has been very successful in 400 meters, Sebastian Coe, who's now Lord Coe, who has won Olympic gold medals. People like that were saying, and Billie Jean King also, I think the female tennis player, saying that they recognise there is no failure, only feedback, and sometimes it takes athletes a long time to learn that. So I think it's much more useful if people learn it when they're 5 years old rather than 25 or 35.
Oh, if I could get this into schools, Jeremy, I'd be a very, very happy woman.
Absolutely.
It's such a gift to have that as a belief that you've got for yourself from such a young age. It would transform so many people's lives. Because there is, yes, I suppose in some ways it could be seen as a flippant statement, but even if you do make a huge error, there'll have been something that happened along that error arising, a decision that you might have made, or a move that you made in the wrong way, or something that you were thinking about differently, that caused that to have happened. And unravelling all that will not only enable you to learn not to do that bit again, but it'll understand why you did it, because it'll be in that why that the learnings happened.
Yeah.
And it's okay, so it didn't go well. It's not, we can't undo that, but you can learn from it already. You can learn from it and teach other people. You can experience it and see additional ways on top of that to do it differently. Because beliefs can play a huge part in people's lives, especially if they're a limiting belief.
Yeah, and I think that with the work I do with clients, but a significant part will be making sure that they've got positive, useful beliefs, and if they happen to have beliefs which hold them back, to use one of the many NLP techniques to help people to basically to change their belief.
About one thing. Sorry.
No.
I was going to say, it's one thing that you discuss in your book of how if people do have limiting beliefs about themselves or their capabilities, on one hand, the role of the coach is to guide them through that and to help them make changes. And one thing that you're pointing out in your book is that you can't make those changes until somebody is ready to make those changes.
Yes, I think that's an important point. And also I think there are some coaches, some sports coaches, and remember we're speaking at all different levels, not just elite level, but perhaps at grassroots level in schools. And I think some coaches don't necessarily have the awareness themselves of the impact of what they do. So there are times when coaches actually inadvertently install limiting or negative beliefs in athletes. By telling them that, they'll never be any good at this or never be any good at that. I remember when I was at school, my PE teacher said I'd never make a goalkeeper. Now, fortunately, I'm pretty determined that I made sure that I proved him wrong. But another kid, and this was at 10 or 11 years old, another kid may have taken that on board and have been lost to the sport.
I had the same thing. I played in the girls' football team as the goalie, and when it was a PE teacher. Previous PE teacher had always said that I'm rubbish at running and that I've got no speed to me and my legs are just about that good enough for walking, let alone for running. And I was like, well, fair enough then. If I can't go and do the running, I'll do more of the javelin or shot put where I didn't have to run. And that was just so that I didn't have that repeated to me, that I was, I was never going to make the team kind of thing. When it came to football, straight away, he said, what position would you play? And I said, well, I've been told that I'm not a fast runner. And he says, but you can catch, can't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, give it a go in goal. And I loved it. Whereas before, I wouldn't even thought about playing football because I'd limited myself to not being a fast runner.
Because of something that the coach had said. And this is, I think, an important point. So you said earlier about making sure that kids know about this. Well, I think it's also useful for parents and coaches and teachers to learn about NLP as well. Oh,
completely. Because even if someone can't do something now, that doesn't mean at all that they can't do it in the future.
Yeah.
Life's always changing. It's always evolving. That's the beauty of the gift of life. And to take away somebody's options and possibilities, it's almost like you're cutting them at the legs and saying you're not going to grow any taller. I'm going to stick you on that shelf, and that's as tall as you're going to get.
Yeah.
When we should be nurturing and getting people to grow and flow, and that's one of the gifts within your book, because you've written it as a guide to coaches as well as the athletes themselves and the players, of how to bring out the best in that person. Enable them to visualize the success that they can have and that they know they're able to. And once they've seen what they want and they've felt that success through the techniques of NLP, there's an automatic rollover of inspiration and motivation, and you just want to run with it and achieve that. And that's where I think NLP makes it different.
I think so. Yeah, and I think also in the book, it's not just about visualization. We cover things like how to be in the right state. So whether that's a sort of calm, relaxed state or a pumped up, motivated state, there are NLP techniques that can help both the athlete themselves and also the coach to help the athlete to get into those states. And we also cover things like motivation, which, you know, people that get motivated in different ways, and some coaches only know one or two ways to motivate an athlete. And the really skilled coaches will know that there are different angles to approach, or different ways to approach each different athlete, and will use and be flexible enough. One of the presuppositions or underpinning beliefs of NLP is about flexibility. Really successful coaches are flexible enough to use different motivation approaches to different athletes,
which is a huge key.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I mean, football or soccer over here is a sport which I'm particularly interested in, and it's quite noticeable how sometimes if a team brings in a new coach or a new manager, how the new manager will somehow bring out more from the same players. He will motivate them in different ways, and it will help them to certainly certain players to play a lot better. And I kind of think, well, what was the previous manager doing? How was he motivating or perhaps demotivating some of the players?
What technique would you say would be there if someone had no motivation or seems easily distracted?
Okay, I don't believe people have got no motivation.
No, nor do I.
I think what happens is that sometimes coaches don't understand what motivates the specific player. And so to sit down and have a relatively brief conversation, you could probably do it in 10 minutes if you really, you know, if you want to do it thoroughly, probably an hour. You could really understand at a deep level what motivates each and every player, such that by knowing that, you can then alter your approach to each of those individual players. Let me give you an example. We have a sport over here called cricket, which I guess is similar to baseball on some level. And about, I suppose, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the captain of the English cricket team was a guy called Michael Vaughan. And I heard him, he was very, very successful. We beat Australia, our big rivals, for the first time in many years in 2005. And I heard him interviewed about a year or so ago. He said that when he became captain, he interviewed each player individually to find out what they wanted. And this was on radio, and the interviewer, who was also an ex-England international, said, "Oh, well, that's obvious. They just want to win, don't they?" And Michael Vaughan said, "Well, hang on. It's more than that. Because, yes, they all want to win, but for each of them, there were each player, there were certain specific things that motivated them as a unique individual. And by finding out what those specific motivation traits were, he was then able to alter his approach to get the best out of each and every one of his players."
Brilliant, brilliant. Jeremy, could you tell our audience how they can find out more about you, about your work, where they can buy your book from, and your website, social media information?
Okay. My website, I've got two websites. The main one for sport is obviously www.winningatsport.com. Winning at sport, all one word, winningatsport.com. Or there's my main corporate website, the Lazarus. That's TheLazarus.com. On those websites, they can see there's various ebooks, so they can download ebooks around communication, around all different aspects of sports psychology. In terms of the actual book, Ahead of the Game, it's available on Amazon. I will, in the next few weeks, have an ebook version of that. Twitter, it's at Jeremy Lazarus. I've got a LinkedIn account. I've got a Facebook account. Probably the best Facebook is the Lazarus Consultancy, which is the name of my company.
Brilliant.
That's how they get in touch with me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jeremy. It's been wonderful, as always.
My pleasure.
Thank you to our audience. If you'd like to learn more about NLP, then please tune in each week and also visit my website, donnablinston.com, where you can pick up a copy of my book, Psychobabble, a straightforward, plain English guide to the benefits of NLP.